Madison had always dreamed of true love. Since she was a little girl, she had found hope in fairy tales of finding a charming prince. At 27, after several failed relationships, she finally met Richard, a charming and enigmatic millionaire. Richard seemed to have stepped out of a romance novel. Tall, with dark hair and piercing eyes, and a smile that could melt any heart. They met at a charity event. Madison, a talented artist, was exhibiting her works in a gallery when Richard approached, captivated by one of her paintings. The connection was instant. They talked all night, laughing and sharing life stories. Richard revealed that, besides being a successful businessman, he was a great admirer of the arts, which brought them even closer. After 6 months of intense and passionate dating, Richard surprised Madison with an unforgettable marriage proposal. During a romantic dinner in Paris, with the Eiffel Tower in the background, he got down on one knee and, with a dazzling ring in hand, made the proposal. Overwhelmed with emotion, Madison accepted without hesitation. It seemed the perfect ending to a fairy tale. The following months were a whirlwind of emotions. Madison threw herself into wedding preparations, thinking through every detail with care. Richard, always attentive, ensured that everything was perfect. The anticipation for the big day grew with each passing moment, and Madison felt like she was living a dream. The wedding was a grand event. Held at a luxurious seaside resort, it was attended by celebrities, friends, and family. The ceremony, at sunset, was worthy of a film. Madison, in a stunning dress, and Richard, elegant in his suit, exchanged heartfelt vows, promising eternal love. The honeymoon in the Maldives was magical. Days of sun, paradisiacal beaches, and moments of pure happiness. Madison felt like the luckiest woman in the world. Upon returning home, an elegant and spacious mansion, the two were more in love than ever. Richard seemed to be the perfect husband, always attentive and loving. However, as the weeks passed, small actions by Richard began to arouse Madison's suspicions. He received mysterious calls and left the house without explanations. Whenever she questioned him, he would change the subject or give evasive answers. Initially, Madison ignored it, believing it was just her imagination. The distrust intensified when, one night, Madison woke up and found Richard in the office, on the phone, in a heated conversation. When he noticed her presence, he immediately hung up, visibly nervous. When questioned about it, Richard simply said it was a business matter and that she needn't worry. Despite this, Madison couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. That night in the office remained etched in Madison's memory. Richard, always so composed and in control, was visibly shaken. His voice, usually calm, was harsh and filled with urgency. The cold gleam in his eyes made Madison shiver. When questioned, his evasive response only heightened her doubts. She knew that something was being hidden. The following days were filled with tension. Madison, usually carefree, began to observe Richard more closely. Every gesture, every word, seemed to conceal a secret. She tried to convince herself that it was just her mind playing tricks on her, but the unease within her grew. Richard, on the other hand, behaved as if nothing had happened, which only heightened Madison's discomfort. Finally, unable to bear the anxiety any longer, Madison confronted Richard. She asked directly about the calls and mysterious outings. Richard, with a tense smile, said they were just complicated business matters. He assured her that there was no reason to worry, but his eyes avoided hers. Madison tried to accept the explanation, but the feeling that something was wrong remained. Determined to uncover the truth, Madison began to investigate discreetly. Taking advantage of Richard's absences, she searched the office for any clues. Her efforts were initially fruitless, but she refused to give up. Every drawer, every document, was a potential piece of the puzzle. One day, while rummaging through a locked drawer she had finally managed to open, Madison found an old, worn envelope. Inside, there were a series of documents that seemed to belong to another life of Richard. Unknown names and places, records of strange transactions, and a photo of Richard with a group of ominous-looking people. Her heart raced, and a chill ran down her spine. Armed with the documents, Madison decided to confront Richard again. She waited for him to come home and, with the envelope in hand, demanded answers. Richard, caught off guard, tried to deflect, but Madison was firm. The tension in the room was palpable. Richard finally admitted that he had a past he wasn't proud of, but assured her that everything was under control now. Madison wanted to believe him, but the doubts persisted. After that conversation, Richard became more defensive. He avoided discussions about his past and got irritated whenever Madison tried to bring it up. The house, once a home of love and happiness, became a silent battleground. Madison felt increasingly isolated, caught between her love for her husband and her fear of the unknown. Determined not to be left in the dark, Madison intensified her investigation. She began to observe Richard's behaviors more closely, noting the timings and details of his calls. She also sought help from an old friend, a private investigator, to better understand the documents she had found. Each new discovery led her deeper into the labyrinth of Richard's secrets, and the sense of danger grew. The collaboration with the private investigator began to bear fruit. Madison started receiving detailed reports on Richard's movements and the contacts he maintained. The documents revealed financial transactions under false names, remote locations, and offshore bank accounts. Each new clue confirmed her worst fears. Richard was involved in something illegal and dangerous. Nights became unbearable for Madison. She relived every moment with Richard, trying to understand how she had been so blind. The revelations of his dark past brought a mix of fear and anger. Silent tears and anguished thoughts accompanied her. She wondered if she had ever truly known the man she married. As the investigation deepened, Madison discovered that Richard was involved in an art trafficking and money laundering network. He used his companies and influential contacts to move vast amounts of dirty money. Dangerous people were involved, and any misstep could put her life at risk. The full picture of the man she shared her life with was terrifyingly dark. Armed with new information, Madison decided to confront Richard once more. She waited for him in the office, the documents spread out on the table. When he entered and saw the evidence, his face twisted in a mixture of fury and fear. Madison demanded the truth, wanting to know the extent of his lies. Richard, however, clammed up, refusing to provide more details. Under pressure, Richard partially confessed to his crimes. He admitted that before meeting her, he had gotten involved with the wrong people and made choices he wasn't proud of to maintain his fortune. He tried to justify his actions by saying it was all for their sake, to ensure a comfortable future. Madison, however, remained unconvinced and felt far from safe. Richard's partial confession left Madison torn. Part of her still loved him and wanted to believe he could change, but the fear and distrust were too strong. She didn't know whom to trust, and the uncertainty ate away at her peace of mind. The house, once a refuge, had become a prison of secrets and threats. The relationship between Madison and Richard rapidly deteriorated. Conversations were cold and distant, and tension hung in the air like an impending storm. Madison noticed that Richard had become more paranoid, and his outings grew more frequent. Each day, the distance between them widened, and the atmosphere in the house became more stifling. Realizing she couldn't face this situation alone, Madison decided to seek external help. She contacted a lawyer and began planning a strategy to protect herself. She also spoke with the private investigator about the possibility of involving the authorities, even though she knew this could endanger them both. Madison was determined to get out of this situation, but knew she would need all the support she could get. Madison arranged a meeting with someone from Richard's past, a woman named Clara who, according to the investigator, had crucial information. They met in a discreet cafe. Clara was a woman with a tired appearance, but with piercing eyes that reflected a life of hardships. She looked at Madison with a mix of compassion and caution, knowing that the truth could destroy someone's world. Clara revealed disturbing details about Richard. He was not only involved in financial crimes, but also in more dangerous activities such as extortion and violence. Clara recounted that she had met Richard during a dark period in her life, and that he had manipulated and exploited vulnerable people to achieve his goals. The stories of betrayal and cruelty were terrifying, and Madison felt a crushing weight on her chest as she listened to every word. Richard led an impeccable double life. To the world, he was a respected businessman and a benefactor of the arts. But behind the scenes, he was a master manipulator, using his charm and resources to conceal his crimes. He had contacts in the criminal underworld and knew how to protect himself. Madison's life felt like a house of cards about to collapse. With each revelation, Madison felt her heart break a little more. The man she loved and trusted was a stranger. The image of the perfect husband was shattered, leaving only a feeling of betrayal and fear. Silent tears ran down her face as she processed the information. The emotional pain was intense, and she felt lost, unsure of whom to trust or how to move forward. The most frightening moment came when Clara revealed that Richard was aware of Madison's investigation and that he did not tolerate betrayals. Clara warned that Madison was in serious danger. Richard would not hesitate to use violence to protect his secrets. Madison felt a chill run down her spine as she realized her life was truly at risk. Madison knew she needed to act quickly. She began planning an escape, contacting the lawyer to discuss possible protection and a way out. She also spoke with the investigator about gathering enough evidence to involve the authorities without alerting Richard. Every move had to be calculated, and every decision could mean the difference between life and death. With his keen instincts, Richard began to sense that something was wrong. Madison noticed his increasing vigilance, and every move she made was watched more closely. He became more aggressive and controlling, limiting her outings and monitoring her calls. The tension in the house reached an unbearable level, and Madison knew that time was running out. The atmosphere at home became unsustainable. Madison felt like a prisoner, watched at every moment. Richard's glances were filled with suspicion, and at any moment, he could discover her plans. Every night was a battle against fear, and every morning a struggle to maintain the facade. The accumulated tension was palpable, and the house seemed like a minefield ready to explode. Madison knew she could no longer live in uncertainty and fear. She prepared for a definitive confrontation with Richard. Every word was carefully planned, every document strategically hidden. She knew this conversation could be the last and needed to be ready for anything. The lawyer and the investigator were on standby, awaiting her signal to act. The dilemma of whether to flee or confront Richard directly gnawed at her. Fleeing would mean abandoning everything she had built, but would also ensure her safety. Confronting Richard, on the other hand, was risky but might be the only way to resolve the situation once and for all. Madison weighed her options, contemplating the consequences of each choice. On the designated night, Madison waited for Richard in the office. When he entered, the tension was palpable. She presented the documents, the proof of his illegal activities, and demanded the truth. Richard, initially calm, became aggressive. He tried to intimidate her, but Madison stood firm. The exchange of words became heated, revealing more secrets and lies. Under pressure, Richard finally revealed his true nature. He confessed his crimes with chilling coldness, justifying his actions as necessary to maintain his power and wealth. Madison saw in his eyes a man without remorse, willing to do anything to protect his secrets. The image of a loving husband vanished, replaced by an unrelenting criminal. When all seemed lost, Madison remembered an emergency exit in the house, used for safety in case of fire. She knew this could be her only chance. Pretending to calm down, she slowly backed away, reaching the hidden door. With a quick movement, she opened the exit and ran into the night, her heart pounding uncontrollably. As she ran, Madison heard Richard shouting behind her. The suspense was overwhelming. Each step was a fight for survival. The darkness around her seemed to close in, and fear propelled her forward. She knew every second counted, and the possibility of being captured kept her on high alert. Richard did not give up easily. He chased after Madison, determined to stop her from escaping. The pursuit was intense, passing through corridors and unfamiliar doors. Madison used her agility to gain an advantage, but Richard was relentless. A physical confrontation seemed inevitable, and Madison knew she had to think quickly to survive. With one last burst of energy, Madison managed to evade Richard, finding an exit to the street. She ran to a prearranged meeting point with the investigator. There, she found refuge and support. The relief mixed with the adrenaline of the moment brought tears to her eyes. She was free, but she knew the battle was far from over. Madison ran through the dark streets, her heart pounding like a drum. Each step seemed to echo in the silent night, and she felt danger lurking around every corner. Adrenaline surged through her veins as she tried to find a taxi or any transport to take her far away. The city, usually welcoming, now seemed like a labyrinth of threats. Richard, enraged and determined to reclaim her, wasted no time in starting a pursuit. He used his contacts to track Madison, activating security cameras and allies to find any trace of her. The feeling of being followed became constant for Madison, and she knew she had to be quick and smart to escape his reach. Madison finally found a police station and, without hesitation, went inside to seek help. She told her story to the officers, handing over the evidence she had collected. The police, initially skeptical, began to take her seriously when they saw the magnitude of Richard's crimes. They promised protection and launched a formal investigation, but Madison knew Richard's influence could complicate matters. While waiting in a safe location provided by the police, Madison had a few dangerous encounters. One of Richard's henchmen managed to locate her and attempted to capture her. Madison narrowly escaped, thanks to the timely intervention of an undercover officer. Each day seemed to bring a new threat, and she realized her life would never be the same. Madison found unexpected support from a group of survivors of similar crimes. They offered her refuge and valuable advice on how to stay safe. This support network consisted of people who had faced similar dangers and had experience in escaping difficult situations. They became her new family, helping her to plan her next steps. Amidst the chaos, Madison had moments of relief, realizing she was not alone. The support network provided a safe haven, but fear and tension remained constant. The nights were the hardest, filled with frequent nightmares and the constant feeling of being watched. She alternated between moments of hope and despair, struggling to maintain her sanity. In a critical moment, Richard nearly captured Madison. He found her in one of the hideouts and chased her through the streets again. The pursuit was intense and desperate, with Madison using every ounce of energy to flee. Help arrived at the last possible moment, with the police intercepting Richard and giving Madison another chance to escape. With the help of the police and her new network of friends, Madison managed to temporarily elude Richard. They took her to an unknown location, off the usual radar. The sense of security was fragile but real. She knew she needed to keep moving, constantly changing places to avoid being found again. The fight for freedom had only just begun, and Madison was determined to win. Madison met Daniel in one of the secret shelters within the support network. He was a former FBI agent who had left the force due to a corruption scandal he had exposed among his superiors. Now, Daniel used his skills and connections to help victims like Madison. His experienced gaze and calm demeanor inspired confidence. Madison, initially wary, found in him an unlikely but valuable ally. In the days that followed, Madison and Daniel began working together. He taught her survival and evasion techniques, such as constantly changing routines and identifying potential threats. Gradually, Madison started to trust him. Daniel shared his own stories of betrayal and struggle, creating a bond of mutual understanding. Their partnership strengthened Madison, giving her new hope. With Daniel's help, Madison developed an action plan to confront Richard. They gathered all the evidence and prepared a strategy to involve the authorities more effectively. Daniel used his contacts to ensure that the investigation into Richard was impartial and thorough. The plan included moving Madison to a safe location while the net closed around Richard. Daniel recruited other allies, including former FBI colleagues and members of the support network with specific skills. Together, they formed a team dedicated to protecting Madison and ensuring Richard's capture. Each member had a crucial role, from providing surveillance to organizing Madison's movements. The feeling of being surrounded by competent and trustworthy people brought Madison some peace. The preparations for the final confrontation were meticulous. Daniel and his team monitored Richard's movements, waiting for the right moment to act. Madison, though anxious and fearful, felt more prepared than ever. She knew this was her best chance to end the nightmare. Every detail was planned with precision, ensuring there was no room for error. During the preparations, Madison had moments of reflection. She thought about everything she had been through, from the initial enchantment with Richard to the discovery of his dark side. The painful journey, though exhausting, had transformed her into a stronger and more determined woman. She found strength in places she never imagined, and this motivated her to move forward, not just for herself but for all of Richard's victims. Through Daniel's guidance and the support of the network, Madison grew stronger emotionally. She learned to control her fear and trust in her abilities. Each small success, each successful escape, boosted her confidence. Madison transitioned from being a helpless victim to a determined fighter. She was ready to face Richard and end his tyranny. The first confrontation with Richard took place in an isolated location, carefully chosen by Daniel's team. Madison, with newfound courage, faced Richard head-on. The tension in the air was palpable. Richard, surprised by the turn of events, tried to intimidate her, but Madison stood firm. With Daniel and the others ready to intervene, Madison presented the evidence and her intentions to bring him to justice, marking the beginning of the end for Richard. The final confrontation took place in an isolated country house, far from prying eyes. Madison was accompanied by Daniel and other team members, all strategically positioned. Richard arrived at the location believing he would resolve everything quickly and brutally. The tension was palpable, the silence heavy, each sound amplified by the anticipation of the inevitable clash. Realizing the trap, Richard revealed his true motives without hesitation. He was willing to do anything to keep his criminal empire intact. His cold and calculating gaze showed no remorse. He spoke about the power and control he wielded, how he manipulated everyone around him, and how Madison was just another pawn in his game. The tension turned to action when Richard made a sudden move, attempting to attack Madison. Daniel's team reacted immediately, but Richard was prepared, and an intense physical confrontation ensued. Madison, though terrified, used the techniques Daniel had taught her to protect herself. The fight was fierce, with Richard showing terrifying strength and ferocity. In a critical moment, Richard managed to disarm one of Daniel's allies and pointed a gun at Madison. The room seemed to freeze, all eyes fixed on the scene. Madison, feeling life slipping away, looked into Richard's eyes, seeing all the darkness and contempt. She knew this could be her last moment. With unexpected courage, Madison remembered a piece of advice from Daniel. Use the mind before force. She spoke to Richard, touching on sensitive points from his past, trying to distract him. As he hesitated, Daniel and another ally managed to disarm and immobilize him. The risk was still high, but Madison seized the opportunity to help neutralize Richard for good. Richard was finally subdued and arrested, with Daniel's team ensuring he was taken into custody. The feeling of relief was overwhelming. Madison, exhausted and emotionally drained, looked at the man she once loved and felt a mixture of sadness and liberation. The physical battle was won, but the emotional scars would take time to heal. With Richard in custody, the police launched a thorough investigation. The evidence provided by Madison and the support network was crucial in dismantling Richard's criminal operation. The media quickly picked up the story, turning Madison into a prominent figure. She knew the fight wasn't completely over, but a significant step had been taken. In the days that followed, Madison reflected on everything that had happened. She realized the strength she had discovered within herself, the importance of truth and justice. Daniel and the team remained by her side, offering continued support. Madison began to plan for the future, determined to rebuild her life and use her experience to help other victims of similar crimes. Madison, finally free from Richard's oppressive shadow, began to rebuild her life. The first week after his arrest was a whirlwind of emotions and activities. She moved to a new apartment in a different city, seeking a fresh start far from her painful past. Though simple, her new home brought her a sense of peace and renewal. The first few months were challenging. Madison struggled with constant nightmares and flashbacks. Every strange noise and unfamiliar face triggered waves of anxiety. She started therapy, where she could explore her emotions and traumas. Her therapist, an empathetic and patient woman, helped her confront her fears and deal with her pain. Slowly, Madison began to feel stronger. Over time, Madison started forming new friendships. She met Emma, a neighbor who became her confidant and loyal friend. Together, they attended yoga classes and support groups. Emma was a constant source of encouragement, and her friendship was essential to Madison's recovery. Gradually, she surrounded herself with people who made her feel safe and valued. Madison began to reflect on the future with more optimism. She returned to painting, rediscovering her passion for art. Her works, reflecting her journey of pain and overcoming, soon began to attract the attention of local galleries. Painting became a way to express her emotions and reconnect with her essence. Madison also considered writing a book about her experience, hoping to help others in similar situations. Besides art, Madison found a new passion in helping victims of violence and abuse. She started volunteering at an organization that supported these individuals, using her story to inspire and empower others. Her involvement with the organization brought new purpose to her life. Helping other victims not only gave meaning to her suffering but also strengthened her. Madison's life began to restart with new perspectives. She learned to appreciate the small things, like a walk in the park or coffee with friends. The scars of the past were still there, but she saw them as marks of her survival and resilience. Each day was a new opportunity for growth and discovery. Madison felt more confident and determined to live fully. Madison realized that overcoming and resilience were fundamental to her recovery. She continued therapy, exploring the depths of her traumas and finding ways to cope with them. Her inner strength became a beacon, not only for herself but also for those around her. She began giving talks at support events for victims, sharing her story and inspiring others to find their own strength. Madison's journey culminated in a positive and inspiring ending. Her life had changed drastically, but she managed to turn adversity into strength. Her paintings were exhibited in a prominent art gallery, and her volunteer work received public recognition. Madison was surrounded by people who supported and loved her. She had found new meaning in her life, proving that even in the darkest situations, it is possible to find light. Despite the significant progress in her life, Madison could not ignore the repercussions of her past. The emotional scars were still present, and certain triggers made her relive moments of terror. Specific places, people with traits similar to Richard's, or even loud and unexpected noises put her on high alert. However, Madison learned to recognize and manage these triggers, using breathing techniques and meditation to stay calm. Madison continued attending therapy regularly. Each session was an opportunity to explore and process her traumas. She developed strategies to cope with post-traumatic stress, such as therapeutic writing and art. Her journals became a safe space to express her deepest feelings, while painting helped her transform pain into beauty. The healing journey was long, but she was committed to every step. Occasionally, the dark past made unexpected visits. News about Richard's trial or occasional contacts from old acquaintances brought up painful memories. These visits were destabilizing, but Madison was better prepared to face them. She relied on the support of her friends and therapists, who helped her process these situations without being overwhelmed. Madison found various ways to strengthen herself emotionally. Besides therapy and art, she dedicated herself to regular yoga and meditation practice. These activities provided mental and physical balance, helping her maintain clarity and serenity. Participating in support groups and sharing her story with other victims also became a source of strength. Each time she helped someone, she felt more empowered and capable. Madison deeply understood the importance of emotional and psychological support. Without the help of her therapist, friends, and support networks, her recovery would have been much more difficult. She made a point to maintain these strong bonds, valuing each person who helped her overcome the challenges. She also dedicated herself to giving back, volunteering, and being a present friend for those in her life. Gradually, Madison began to overcome her traumas and fears. Each small step was a victory. Going out alone at night, trusting new people, and even revisiting places that once terrified her. She realized that fear did not completely disappear, but it could be managed. Madison learned to confront her fears with courage, using them as catalysts for her personal growth. Madison's story became a source of inspiration for many. Her lectures and workshops on resilience and overcoming adversity attracted attention and respect. She was invited to speak at conferences and victim support events, where she shared her experiences and lessons learned. Madison used her art to tell her story, holding exhibitions that deeply moved visitors. She became a symbol of strength and hope for everyone who had faced similar adversities. In the end, Madison found moments of reflection and peace. Sitting on her balcony, watching the sunset, she reflected on her journey. The pain of the past still existed, but it was now accompanied by a profound sense of accomplishment and self-awareness. Madison had found her path, turning her suffering into a force for good. She knew that, regardless of what the future held, she was prepared to face any challenge with courage and resilience. Months after settling into her new life, Madison met Jake at a local art gallery. He was a writer, passionate about stories of overcoming adversity and courage. Their encounter was casual, but it soon transformed into something more significant. The connection between them was palpable, and Jake, with his calm and gentle demeanor, brought a new sparkle to Madison's eyes. Madison felt a whirlwind of emotions as she grew closer to Jake. The traumas of the past had left her wary of getting involved again. She feared repeating past mistakes and opening her heart to someone who might cause her pain. Each gesture of affection from Jake was met with caution, and Madison found herself torn between the desire to move forward and the fear of getting hurt. Despite her initial fears, Madison decided to give the relationship a chance. Jake proved to be patient and understanding, respecting her pace and boundaries. They shared simple moments, like walks in the park and endless conversations about art and literature. Gradually, Madison began to feel safe with him, and their relationship blossomed based on trust and mutual respect. Madison applied the lessons from her past to her new relationship. She openly communicated her fears and needs, something she hadn't done with Richard. Jake also shared his own experiences and traumas, creating a space of mutual understanding and support. This transparency strengthened their bond, making Madison realize that a healthy relationship is built on honesty and empathy. In time, Madison allowed herself to love again. She realized that Jake was different from anyone she had known before. He accepted her with all her scars and encouraged her to grow. Madison began to open her heart, allowing herself to feel the happiness that had been denied for so long. The love that blossomed between them was sweet and genuine, based on a deep mutual understanding. The moments of happiness and growth with Jake were precious. Madison felt free and light, enjoying life with a new perspective. Together, they traveled, explored new hobbies, and built unforgettable memories. Jake encouraged Madison to continue with her art, and she found in her paintings a new way to express her newfound joy and hope. Like any couple, Madison and Jake faced challenges. Madison's traumas occasionally resurfaced, bringing out insecurities and fears. Jake, in turn, faced his own demons. However, instead of drifting apart, they faced these challenges together. Each obstacle overcome reinforced the strength of their relationship, showing that true love is resilient and adaptable. Madison developed a new understanding of what true love is. She learned that loving is not just about sharing happy moments, but also about supporting each other through adversities. True love involves acceptance, patience, and a constant desire to grow together. With Jake, Madison found a partner who understood and valued her, and she learned to trust again in the transformative power of love. The legal proceedings against Richard finally began. With all the evidence provided by Madison and Daniel's team, the police had built a solid case. The trial promised to be a media spectacle, with journalists and onlookers following every step. Madison, though anxious, was determined to see justice served. Her presence in the courtroom was a constant reminder of the impact Richard had had on her life. The days of the trial were emotionally exhausting for Madison. Sitting in the courtroom, she listened to the lawyers present detailed evidence of Richard's crimes. Witnesses described his cruel and manipulative actions, painting a grim picture of the man she had once loved. Each testimony was a blow, reviving painful memories, but Madison remained steadfast, knowing that her courage was vital to ensure justice prevailed. Justice began to unfold as the court heard the undeniable evidence against Richard. The trial exposed the full extent of his crimes, from money laundering to extortion and violence. The testimonies of the victims, including Madison's, were compelling. When the guilty verdict was finally announced, a sigh of relief swept through the courtroom. Richard was sentenced to a long prison term, ensuring he could no longer harm anyone. Richard faced severe legal consequences. In addition to the prison sentence, his businesses were dismantled and his assets confiscated. The criminal network he commanded was taken down, thanks to the cooperation of former allies who, in exchange for lighter sentences, provided crucial information. The destruction of Richard's empire was complete, and he ceased to be a threat to Madison and society. Madison felt vindicated and relieved with the outcome of the trial. The sense of justice being served brought her peace and closure that she had thought impossible to achieve. The shadow of Richard, which had loomed over her life for so long, finally dissipated. Madison could now look to the future with hope and determination, knowing her struggle was not in vain. Madison's case prompted deep reflections on the importance of justice. She realized that holding Richard accountable was not just about her own revenge, but about protecting other potential victims and restoring order. Justice, though delayed, was essential for collective healing and restoring trust in legal institutions. With justice served, Madison focused on rebuilding her life without the constant threat of Richard. She devoted more time to her art, and her exhibitions began to attract significant attention. The new sense of security allowed her to explore new opportunities and deepen her volunteer work, helping other victims find their own justice and healing. The closure of the chapter with Richard brought a profound sense of peace to Madison. Although the scars of the past remained, they were now accompanied by a sense of achievement and resilience. She knew that her past did not define her, but rather her ability to overcome it. With justice finally served, Madison could move forward, free from the chains of fear and filled with hope for the future. Over time, Madison reflected on her entire journey. Every event, from the initial encounter with Richard to the final confrontation, shaped her view of the world and herself. She recognized the importance of each obstacle overcome, realizing how these experiences made her stronger and more resilient. Madison found a new perspective on life, based on self-acceptance and the recognition of her inner strength. Determined to turn her experience into something positive, Madison began sharing her story publicly. She participated in television programs, podcasts, and wrote articles for magazines. Her goal was to help other victims of abuse and violence find the courage to leave dangerous situations and seek justice. Every time she told her story, she felt more empowered and inspired to continue helping others. One of the biggest lessons Madison learned was the importance of truly knowing people before completely trusting them. She reflected on how Richard's charm and seduction blinded her to his true motives and actions. Madison now valued the importance of observing behaviors and warning signs, ensuring that her trust was well placed. Madison learned valuable lessons about trust and resilience. She understood that trust should be built slowly and based on consistent actions, not enchanting words. Resilience, in turn, became a crucial trait in her life. She learned to get up after each fall, to find strength in adversity, and to turn challenges into opportunities for growth. Madison found profound purpose in helping others. Her involvement with victim support organizations became a central part of her life. She dedicated herself to creating support programs and workshops, using her personal experience to offer practical and emotional guidance. Helping others became a source of fulfillment and meaning for Madison. Madison's story became an inspiration to many. She received letters and messages from people who found courage and hope through her example. Her journey from suffering to overcoming was widely shared, serving as a beacon of hope for those in similar situations. Madison, with her voice and actions, touched many lives, proving that human resilience has no limits. Over time, Madison began to live a full and happy life. She found a balance between her work, her passions, and her relationships. Jake remained by her side, and together they built a life based on love and mutual respect. Madison continued to paint and help others, feeling fulfilled and at peace. Each day was a new opportunity to live with purpose and joy. Madison concluded her story with a message of hope and strength. She believed that, regardless of the difficulties faced, everyone has the capacity to find inner strength to overcome adversity. Madison encouraged everyone to seek help, not to give up, and to believe in the possibility of a better future. Her life became a testament that darkness can be transformed into light, and that each of us has the power to rewrite our own story. Thank you for watching. If you were inspired by Madison's incredible journey of resilience and courage, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you never miss an update. Share this video with others who need a dose of hope and strength. Leave a comment below to let us know how her story touched you.